Seems like everyone and their mother is making creepypasta videos for Halloween this year, so I thought why not join in? So today I'm going to be ranking Pokemon creepypastas. I just wanted to make like a fun, quick, spooky little video for the Halloween season while I'm working on some longer videos. This is going to be my first fully unscripted video, so hopefully it actually ends up being watchable. So I have here 14 different Pokemon creepypastas that we're going to be ranking. This is far from every Pokemon creepypasta ever, but I didn't want this to be like a 3-hour long video. So I just chose some of the more well-known ones, as well as some others that I thought would be interesting to have in the mix. So let's go over our tiers here. We've got the Certified Iconic tier, which I think is pretty self-explanatory. We've got the Spoopy and Creepy tier. If anyone recognizes that reference, I salute you, fellow Tumblr veterans. So that's going to be for ones that, like, I think are pretty good. They've got, like, the horror elements down, they're pretty creative, but they're not quite iconic level. And then next we've got Okay, Let Them Cook. That will be for ones that I think have potential, but maybe they didn't quite reach their full potential. Like, something more could be added to really bring it to the next level. Then next we have Ouch, I Cut Myself on That Edge. I know that being edgy is sort of like a requirement for a creepypasta pretty much, but some of them I think maybe lean into it a little too hard. So, you know, they're maybe trying a little too hard to be, like, edgy and, I don't know, shocking, horrific, but doing a little too much, maybe sort of ending up being corny instead. And then lastly, we have Try Harder, and those are for the ones that I think are maybe a little derivative, not very original, which is something that I did notice quite a bit when I was looking into all these creepypastas. Alright, so I guess let's go ahead and begin. So first we have Buried Alive, or I've also heard it referred to as Buried Alive Model. I know this is a pretty well-known one, but for anyone who isn't aware or hasn't heard of it, I will give a brief description for each creepypasta. So, Buried Alive is about a supposed unused script found in the code of Pokemon Red and Blue. It was about a battle that was intended to be the final boss of Pokemon Tower in Lavender Town. Anyone who's familiar with those games knows that originally the final boss of the tower is just Cubone's mother. But this is something that was supposed to happen, like, after that, once you reach the very top floor. Text would come up saying, "You're ... here. I'm trapped ... and I'm lonely ... so very lonely ... won't you join me?" And then a battle begins with the Buried Alive, a zombie-like creature, that has a Muck, a Gengar, and 2 white hands, which are like rotting hand sprites that use the move Transform, all of which at extremely high levels. And apparently, if the player somehow wins this battle, the game will freeze due to a script not being programmed for that scenario, but if the player loses, Buried Alive will say, "Finally, raw meat," and an image will come on the screen of Buried Alive devouring the player character while creepy music plays. So like I said, this one is like one of the Pokemon creepypasta OGs. I don't find it very believable. Like, I think anyone who's familiar with Pokemon will know that, like, Pokemon would never put something like that in their games. But, you know, I do appreciate what they were doing. Like, definitely, if this was something I had heard about as a kid, that would have freaked me out, so I'm gonna put that one in Spoopy and Creepy. So next we have a pasta that's just called Disabled. So this pasta is about a girl whose favorite Pokemon were Jigglypuff and Wigglytuff. And one day she was playing Pokemon Soul Silver and traded on the GTS for a Wigglytuff that was nicknamed Disabled in all caps. Upon receiving it, she enters a battle with a wild Ponyta, but is unable to use any moves, with the game saying that they're disabled. It won't let her run from the battle either. Wigglytuff then kept attempting to use Sing on its own until it started struggling. Finally, the Ponyta fled from the battle, and when OP attempted to talk to the Wigglytuff because it was following behind her, it said, "I just wanted to sing, and why can't I sing?" They then got into another battle with the wild Ponyta, and the same thing happened, this time with the addition of glitched text. After the battle, the evolve screen appeared and Wigglytuff came up, except its sprite looked creepy with like red eyes and blood dripping and shit, and asked, "Can you sing?" OP tried to answer no, but it kept asking over and over until the speakers let out a high-pitched screech, which, as we'll see, is something that happens a lot in these creepypastas. OP ended up trading the Wigglytuff away for a Cyndaquil who had the nickname Hurry. This one, it's not bad, but I don't feel like it packs quite as much of a punch as some of the others. I don't know. This one's just kind of like mid for me. I think I'm gonna put it in, should I do ouch, I cut myself on that edge? Because, like, as you can see from the image, this is definitely edgy one, or should we do try harder? I think I'm gonna go ouch, I cut myself on that edge for this one. Okay, next one we have a very famous one, and this is one of the few creepypastas that I've known about since, like, it came out, like, since I was a kid, because a lot of these I'd actually didn't know anything about until, like, more recently. This is the Ash coma theory. So anyone who's, like, a fan of cartoons, especially, like, cartoons aimed at younger kids, is probably familiar with coma theories. They're strangely popular for some reason to explain away, like, things in kids' cartoons that aren't realistic and don't make any sense. And personally, I'm not really a fan of coma theories. I think that they're just really lacking in creativity, and, like, why can't you just let us have fun, whimsical cartoons? Why does everything need to have, like, a gritty and realistic explanation, you know? So, the Ash coma theory purports that after Ash is struck by lightning in episode 1 of the anime, he falls into a coma, and the rest of the anime is a fabrication by his mind while comatose. The theory gets into a whole bunch of, like, Freudian psychological analysis. Like, if you haven't read it, just go and read it yourself. Like, Freud is absolutely spinning in his grave. It tries to explain, like, what each character and event in the anime represents in Ash's, like, psyche. And it has, the creepypasta has two possible endings. Either Ash is taken off of life support and realizes that most of his Pokemon journey wasn't real before passing away, so that's, like, the bad ending, I guess. Or he finally reconciles with all the different parts of his psyche in an Evangelion-esque moment and wakes up, eventually setting off on a real Pokemon journey, which is, like, the good ending. Yeah, so like I said, I'm not really a fan of coma theories. I don't know. I just think they're no fun, you know? And this one's no different for me, even though, like, when I first read it as a kid, I was like, oh my god, like, it blew my mind. But now that I'm older and I'm looking back, I'm like, this ain't it. So we're gonna put that one in try harder. Next one we have is, why do I keep doing that? Hypno's Lullaby. So this one's kind of cool. Instead of, like, a little story, it's like a poem. So Hypno, the hypnosis Pokemon, has several Pokedex entries that mention it leading away children that it hypnotizes. So someone created this poem based on that scenario that describes Hypno kidnapping children and eating their grief-ridden family's dreams. The poem's not very long, so I'll just read it out. Come, little children, come with me, safe and happy you will be. Away from your homes, now let us run. With Hypno, you'll have so much fun. Oh, little children, please don't cry. Hypno wouldn't hurt a fly. Be free, be free, be free to play. Come down in my cave with me to stay. Oh, little children, please don't squirm. Those ropes I know will hold you firm. Hypno tells you this is true, but sadly Hypno lied to you. Oh, little children, you mustn't leave. Your families for you will grieve. Their minds will unravel at the seams, allowing me to haunt their dreams. But surely all of you must know that it is time for you to go. Oh, little children, weren't you clever? Now you shall stay with me forever. Yeah, I kind of fuck with this one because it's a little bit different. Like, I appreciate the creativity, so I don't know if I want to say certified iconic, but we'll go with spoopy and creepy. I appreciate what the author was doing there. Okay, so next we have probably my personal favorite Pokemon Creepypasta, and the first Pokemon Creepypasta I ever discovered, I guess, which is the Lavender Town Syndrome. This one is extremely famous. Like, this one, I think of all Pokemon Creepypastas, is probably the one that most breached containment outside of, like, the Pokemon and the Creepypasta fandoms. So I'm sure most of you watching this have heard of it, but I will nonetheless give a brief explanation. So, Lavender Town is a location in the first Pokemon games, Pokemon Red and Blue/Green, depending on if you were in Japan or the rest of the world. And unlike many of the other towns in the Pokemon games, Lavender Town was a bit different. It had a very spooky vibe because it had the Pokemon Tower, which was like a Pokemon burial ground. It had a ton of ghost-type Pokemon, and also had like literal actual ghosts. And I think there were like all the trainers that were in there were like mediums or something. So yeah, there's a lot of creepypastas that are like based on Lavender Town or incorporate Lavender Town in some way. But this one is like, I think the original, the first one. So if you go to Lavender Town, the music that plays is very unsettling, very dissonant sounding. So this creepypasta revolves around that song. So the story goes that the unsettling background music contained an extremely high frequency that could only be perceived by children, and caused hundreds of Japanese children to behave irrationally, develop headaches, and ultimately commit seppuku. And then supposedly the song was changed for the international releases to remove this frequency. Sort of after that, like, original story came out, someone uploaded a video on YouTube showing a spectrogram of the song in which a ghost sprite and the Pokemon Unknown spelling out "leave now" appear. Obviously, like all creepypastas, none of this was real, but I think a lot of people, particularly younger people, even I will admit myself included, thought that this was real. And actually, like, when you think about it, because this was back in like 2010, I can see how it could be believable for some people, particularly like kids, because like I said, the very like high-pitched, dissonant chiptune sound of the Lavender Town theme, if you haven't heard it before, I'll probably have it playing in the background of the video at some point. Definitely not easy on the ears if you have like sensitive hearing. So I can see how, like, you might think that a song like that might cause some of those reactions. And also, the Lavender Town Syndrome story is very reminiscent of an incident that did in fact happen, where an episode of the Pokemon anime, I believe it was called Electric Soldier Porygon, contained rapid flashing lights in it that caused a lot of Japanese kids to have seizures and end up in the hospital. Back in those days of the internet, this would have been hard to fact check unless, like, you knew Japanese and could, like, search, like, Japanese news articles and stuff. So yeah, I appreciate that they made this one a little bit believable. And yeah, like I said, this is my favorite one. I've, like, low-key kind of been obsessed with Lavender Town and the Lavender Town song ever since then, so this one for me is certified iconic. Okay, next we have the Lumio City Ghost Girl. In several of the Pokemon games, they have ghosts, and I don't just mean like ghost Pokemon or whatever, they have like human ghost characters, and one of the games in which such a character appeared was Pokemon X and Y. When you enter I believe it's the second floor of the fighting dojo in Lumio City. The lights flicker, and a girl who has the sprite of a hex maniac appears and floats towards you before saying, "No, you're not the one." And then I think it's supposed to be like this same ghost also appears in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, and maybe Sun and Moon, I don't remember. So yeah, a lot of like theories have sprung up surrounding these ghost characters. And so this pasta is about someone's encounter with such a character. So one theory that sort of sprung up around what this ghost girl meant by saying, "No, you're not the one," was that she was looking for a trainer with a particular ID number. So the OP of this creepypasta said that they had played through their copy of Pokemon X several times, wondering if they would ever get the trainer ID that the ghost girl was searching for, but it never happened. But years later, they decided to play the game again, completely forgetting about the trainer ID theory by this point. And when they checked their trainer ID, when they started their new save file, they saw that the ID number was 6666666. I think I said the right amount of sixes there. They were a little perplexed because they'd never seen a trainer ID number be 5 of the same number before. So they chose Fennekin as their starter, and as they were playing through the game, they noticed that some weird things kept happening. One being that their Fennekin's sprite seemed to be glitched, its eyes were missing its pupils, and it stayed like that even when it evolved into Braixen and then into Delphox. They seemed to be encountering a lot more ghost-type Pokemon than usual, even in areas that didn't normally have ghost-type Pokemon. So they were a little weirded out by all that, but just figured it was a glitch, didn't think too much of it. And then finally they reached the part of the game where you're able to fully explore Lumio City, and they entered the second floor of the fighting dojo, expecting the ghost girl to appear as usual and say, "No, you're not the one," as usual. But instead this time, she said, her dialogue was different, and she said, "It's you. At long last, I have found you." And that's when OP remembered the trainer ID theory and figured that their ID number being 5 6s is what the ghost girl was looking for. A battle started with the ghost girl, and just like with the player's Delphox, she had like creepy blank eyes, and the player easily took out her first Pokemon, which was a Gengar. And then the ghost girl said, "You will regret that." And she sent out another Gengar that used Destiny Bond to take down all of her Pokemon. But instead of blacking out and warping back to the Pokemon Center when the battle ended, the ghost girl instead used Destiny Bond on her. At which point their 3DS shut off on its own. And OP, of course, was playing at night, so they got up to turn the lights when they heard a sound coming from their closet. So they went to open the door to see what it was, and saw a pair of glowing red eyes in their closet. And the eyes started coming towards them until they were right in front of them, and then the OP blacked out. They woke up later that night on their bed, thinking that maybe it had all been a dream, so they went to check their game, but their save file had been completely erased. So they stuffed the game away in the back of their drawer, never touched it again, and it ended with saying, "Thankfully the glowing red eyes have yet to reappear in my closet, but sometimes when I'm alone in my room at night, I can't quite shake the feeling that I'm being watched." So this one, I like how it is something that, again, carried over into real life. It wasn't just like, "Oh, my game did a scary thing," and that's the end. Like, it sort of implied that the ghost like came out of the game and started haunting OP in real life. So I like that part of it, but I don't know, some of it does feel a little ouch. I caught myself on that edge, like with the like 666 trainer ID number. So yeah, I think we're gonna put that in that category. Alright, next we have Pokemon Lost Silver, which is one of many creepypastas where the OP buys a used copy of a Pokemon game and finds that it is different from the actual game. So in this one, OP buys a used copy of Pokemon Silver, but quickly notices some irregularities. When they start up the game, they, instead of being like at the beginning in their house or whatever, they're in Bellsprout Tower, except it's empty. And in their party, they have 5 unknown that spell out leave, and a Cyndaquil named Hurry, which I just now realize connects to the creepypasta we talked about a little bit ago, Disabled, because in that one, the OP received, at the end, they received a Cyndaquil called Hurry. I don't know why I didn't put that together when I was researching this, but however. So they enter a dark room where the Alph Ruins music starts playing, use flash, and walk until they reach a sign that says turn back now, which they do not abide by that sign, and they proceed into another dark room where their Cyndaquil randomly faints, and the unknown in their party now spell out he died. The room is revealed to be a graveyard, and they check their trainer card, and their sprite is now missing its arms. And as they continue to wander around, the sprite becomes more fucked up, and the number of badges they have increases for some reason. And when they check their party again, they now have a level 100 shiny Celebi that only knows Perish Song and has a similarly fucked up sprite, and the unknown now spell out dying. Then they find Red in wherever the fuck they are for some reason, and initiate a battle with him, but he only has a Pikachu that is level 255 and has tears in its eyes. And their Celebi uses Perish Song, and after 3 turns, the battle ends, except the game says that Celebi and Pikachu have died instead of saying that they fainted. And the sprite of Red appears to be beheaded. The battle fades out, and the player is now back in the room, except their sprite appears to be transparent, and the unknown in their party now spell out no more. They leave their house and enter the void, where they encounter their regular sprite. I believe the implication here is that they've, died and become a ghost. And when they speak to their original sprite, it says goodbye forever and vanishes. Then text comes up saying question mark, use nightmare, and the player is transported back to the graveyard, with the unknown now saying I'm dead. And text comes up that says RIP. What is kind of cool about this one is that it was turned into a real fan game that you can play, I guess, if you want to. This one's kind of weird to me. I don't know, there seem to be a lot of elements that were just kind of added in randomly and don't make a whole lot of sense, just for edginess's sake. So I know this one's a classic Pokemon creepypasta, but I'm gonna have to put it on ouch, I cut myself on that edge. Okay, next we have a pasta from my favorite Pokemon Gen 4, and it is called the Old Chateau Secret. So in Pokemon Diamond, Platinum, and Pearl and their remakes, there's a location called the Old Chateau, which is an abandoned mansion in the middle of Eterna Forest, and is run down and overrun by ghost-type Pokemon. And it's also where you can find the Pokemon Rotom in that game. And occasionally, there's a fun little Easter egg when you enter the Old Chateau. If you go into one room that's supposed to be a dining room, sometimes you can see the ghost of what is presumably a butler who glides off screen. Or if you go into one of the rooms upstairs, you can see in the adjacent room the ghost of a little girl that floats out of the room but cannot be found after that. So this creepypasta is a theory that explains what these ghosts are and how they got there. So basically the story goes that a family lived in the mansion consisting of a man, his daughter, and their butler, and the little girl befriended the Rotom that lived in the chateau. Her mother had unfortunately died giving birth to her, which caused her father to resent her. And one day, on his wedding anniversary, he became extremely drunk and in a rage killed his daughter and the butler before being arrested. And the ghost of the two who died still haunt the place, and that's why Rotom still stays there, because he was friends with the little girl. I kind of like this one. I like that it's not just random creepy thing happened, it's an actual theory that's trying to explain something that's in the games. So I appreciate that. I do feel I don't know, they could have done something more with it though. I don't know what, but they were cooking, but I think they could have cooked a little bit longer. Okay, next we have another very iconic one, Pokemon Black. And I believe this one was created before the actual Pokemon Black came out. So it's a little confusing, but this is not referring to the actual Pokemon Black game. So this is yet another creepypasta about a bootleg Pokemon game. So the story goes that OP found a game called Pokemon Black, a Game Boy game, at I believe it was a flea market. And it was a ROM hack of Pokemon Red, with the only difference being that you have a Pokemon in your team called Ghost that has the sprite of the ghosts in Pokemon Tower, and only knows one move, Curse. However, it's not like the normal move curse, where if you're a ghost type and you use it, it cuts down your HP and places a curse on the opposing Pokemon that, like, at the end of each turn cuts down some of their HP. Instead, using it just straight up kills the opponent. And it can even be used to kill trainers, which will replace their overworld sprites with gravestones. So OP was like just playing through the game, having a great time, just fucking murdering everyone, playing the game on easy mode essentially. But then at the end of the game, all of the people and Pokemon that the player has killed will appear on the screen as the Lavender Town theme plays, and the player will then enter a battle with ghosts, during which they are killed and the screen fades to black. And I believe OP said that, like, even when they play through the game again without killing anyone, at the end the ghost will still kill you. This one, I don't know if it's the most creative, but I do appreciate, like, I'm pretty sure this was one of the first, if not the first, Pokemon Creepypasta that was about, like, a ROM hack or, like, a bootleg Pokemon game in which creepy shit happens. So, like, I do appreciate that it was the OG. So I think for that, I will put it in Spoopy and Creepy. Even though, like, by this point, the trope of Pokemon, but with death, is a little played out. Next, we have another very similar creepypasta called Pokemon Strangled Red. You can see, even just from the name, we're already turning the edge up to 11 here. So this one was also about the OP discovering a Pokemon bootleg game. So the story goes that they found a Pokemon Red cartridge in their neighbor's garbage. And when they started up the game, they saw that it was instead called Pokemon Strangled Red. And instead of Red, they were playing as a boy named Steven, who has a Charmander named Miki, I believe it's pronounced, M-I-K-I. And his rival is his brother, Mike. And the game plays out mostly like normal, except upon reaching Lavender Town, it doesn't let you enter the Pokemon Tower, with the game saying that they have no reason to be there. So after beating the Elite Four and his rival, his brother, the game warps Steven back to his house, where his brother asks him to borrow Miki so he can complete the Pokedex. And the game forces you to say yes to this, even if you don't want to, and then initializes a trade sequence. However, the game freezes halfway through. When you restart the game, the screen says 1 year later, and Steven is not in his house where you last were, but rather in the Pokemon Tower, standing in front of a grave with no Pokemon items or badges on him. And as the OP slowly continues to play through the game, they slowly begin to realize that Mike somehow must have gotten Miki killed, sending Steve into a depression. So Steve starts to walk back to his house with the Lavender Town music playing the entire time and occasionally becoming distorted. He then swims to Cinnabar Island and catches a missing No, takes the missing No to Pokemon Tower, and somehow uses it to resurrect Miki. And Steve's name now shows as this Leet Speak version of his name on his trainer card, and he returns to his house with the Lavender Town music becoming more and more distorted as he does so. He stands over his sleeping brother, and when OP selects the revived Miki, whose name now shows up as what looks like a censored swear word in a cartoon, can only use one move, Strangle, and upon using it, the game shuts off, and when restarting it, the story begins again from the beginning, with the implication being that Steve killed his brother. So this one, you know what, I actually think this one, despite the extreme edginess, does a good job of building upon, like, the foundation set by pastas like Pokemon Black and Pokemon Lost Silver, of, like, being a creepy bootleg version of a Pokemon game. I do appreciate the creative touches they added here, of it being like Pokemon but like a completely different story with different characters, like the Steven and Mike characters. I feel like maybe their relationship could have been developed a bit more, but, you know, like, this is a creepypasta we're talking about, not like a published novel or anything. So yeah, I think that we can put that one in Spoopy and Creepy. Okay, next we have the Pokemon War Theory. This one is a little different from the others. It's not so much like death, horror, gore elements, but like the old Chateau one, it is a theory about events that happen in the game or took place before the game. So basically the theory states that Pokemon Red and Blue take place in a post-war Kanto region, and the writer of the creepypasta cites the evidence that your character doesn't seem to have a father, which is true for a lot of Pokemon protagonists, and your rival doesn't seem to have any parents at all, being raised by their grandfather, Professor Oak, and there just don't seem to be that many adults in the game in general, other than like old people or like gym leaders or members of Team Rocket. And then there are even explicit references to war from Lieutenant Surge. I mean, obviously, Lieutenant implies that he was a member of the military, and he has some lines of dialogue that sort of allude to this, where he says, "Hey kid, what do you think you're doing here? You won't live long in combat, that's for sure. Tell you what, kid, electric Pokemon saved me during the war." And I know there's like a lot of Pokemon theory videos that talk more about this, but I do think that this one's quite believable. I don't know if it's what the Game Freak intended when they were creating the game, but yeah, I don't hate this one. You know what? I'll put it in okay, let them cook, because I do feel like it could be expanded upon. Like, who was Kanto at war with? Why do we think they were at war? And also, I forgot to mention that we do have canonical instances of war happening in the Pokemon universe, particularly in Pokemon X and Y, so that's another reason why I think this one is pretty believable. Okay, next we have Sing Meloetta. I like that this one is about one of the more recent Pokemon games, because as you've probably noticed, a lot of these creepypastas revolve around the Gen 1 games. This one is about Gen 5. So, in this one, OP wanted to get a shiny Kyurem in Pokemon White, but was tired of soft resetting, so they bought an action replay. And they used it to get a whole bunch of shiny legendaries, including Meloetta. However, when they caught it, the game glitched and froze, and upon restarting, the Meloetta suddenly had the nickname Siren, with like a musical note character instead of an I. And when sending it into battle, its cry was glitched, and it used Sing without OP doing anything. And when it did this, it said the wild Pokemon had been snared and joined the party. OP was a little bit freaked out by this point, tried depositing Meloetta in the box, but it appeared back in their party again. They tried to reset the game, but upon restarting, they ended up in the giant chasm battling Kyurem, which was also snared by Meloetta. They reset the game again, and this time ended up at N's castle facing N, and Meloetta snared N. And they even tried to delete the save file, restart the game, but Meloetta appeared again saying, "Why won't you love me? See, all your friends like me." And then like all the Pokemon and characters that it had snared appeared on the screen. OP then tried to turn off the DS, but it turned back on its own. And the Meloetta said, "Why are you trying to run? I love you." The battle then started against it, except its sprite looked messed up and creepy, and it tried to snare OP by using Sing, upon which OP started feeling sleepy in real life, but they quickly selected no in the game. Meloetta then became angry and used Hyper Voice, causing an ear-piercing sound to come out of the DS's speakers as the screen zoomed in on Meloetta's face, upon which OP blacked out in real life. And when they awoke, their game seemed to be back to normal, but ever since they found themselves humming an unfamiliar tune, falling asleep without realizing, and seeing a flash of black and green out of the corner of their eye. So yeah, this one, as I'm sure you've noticed, sounds very similar to several of the other ones we've talked about so far. It seems to sort of be an amalgamation of like disabled Pokemon Strangled Red, Pokemon Black, Pokemon Lost Silver put together. Yeah, a little derivative. I think I'm gonna put that one in try harder. I'm sorry. Alright, so this one is called Easter Egg, Snow on Mount Silver, and it's about a brother and a sister that grew up playing the first 3 generations of Pokemon together. And one day they got a Game Shark, and their OP's brother became obsessed with using it. And when they're a bit older, they both decide to revisit Gold and Silver, with the brother once again using Game Shark cheats. The sister comes home one day to find all the brother's Pokemon games destroyed on the floor and the brother in his room in some sort of dissociative fugue state. He freaks out when he sees the sister's Game Boy in her pocket and, like, lunges at her and ends up in the psych ward. While she's visiting him there, he asks his sister to get rid of his Game Boy and all his Pokemon games, but as she's doing so, curiosity gets the better of her, and she boots up his copy of Silver to see what happened that made him freak out so bad. She finds a cheat code written down in a notebook of his that says Easter egg, snow on Mount Silver. So when she starts up the game, his player character is on Mount Silver, unable to leave where it is snowing heavily. As she walks up the mountain, the Pokemon in her team keep dying, and when she reaches the peak, a battle with a creepy-looking Celebi begins. It uses Perish Song, and the character whites out. They then wake up in a cave in Mount Silver that leads to a white room where Red stands. She battles him, and all his Pokemon are dead and creepy-looking too. After the battle, his sprite appears to be grotesque and, like, zombie-like, and text then comes up saying, "Use Destiny Bond." The screen goes white, and the Game Boy emits a loud screeching sound, upon which the sister freaks out and quickly disposes of the game. So what I like about this one is that it involves the use of, like, cheats and glitches, and as I've talked about in previous videos, I really liked using my action replay on my Pokemon games as a kid, but there definitely were instances where, like, the cheats would kind of go wrong and, like, do something weird to your game. And as a kid, that always, like, freaked me out a little bit. So I like that this one sort of builds off of that. It definitely does contain a lot of the elements of some of the other pastas we've talked about, of, like, Pokemon dying, sprites appearing weird, the game doing things without the player controlling it. So I wouldn't say it's, like, the most original, but I do say it's deserving of going in spoopy and creepy tier. Okay, now we have our 14th and final creepypasta of the day, called the Vermilion City Construction Project.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message. Now, back to our show.
So this is another theory one, which, as I've already said, I like. It's a theory as to why Lavender Town changes pretty drastically between Gens 1 and 2. So if you don't know, in the Gen 2 games, you can revisit Kanto, but Lavender Town looks pretty different. It doesn't have the Pokemon Tower anymore. Instead it has, I think it's the Lavender Town Radio Tower. And the music is different, so it's not like the creepy Lavender Town Syndrome music anymore. I do wonder if Game Freak did that on purpose because people thought the original Lavender Town was too creepy or what. So yeah, this theory is supposed to, like, explain that. So basically, the theory goes that Lavender Town was struggling financially because it didn't have a gym or anything to bring in much revenue or visitors to the city. So Team Rocket made a deal with Mr. Fuji to tear down the Pokemon Tower and build a radio tower in its place to bring more revenue into the town, on the condition that they be allowed to hunt the Cubone in the tower for their skulls. Giovanni, however, was apparently superstitious and wanted to build another resting place for the deceased Pokemon of Pokemon Tower before demolishing it, I guess so that, like, their vengeful spirits wouldn't haunt him. He chose to build the new tower in Vermilion City, which is why you see a construction worker with a Machop there in the games. However, things kept going wrong with the construction project, leading Giovanni to believe he had already been cursed by the vengeful spirits of the Pokemon of Pokemon Tower, and this was ultimately part of what contributed to him stepping down from Team Rocket at the end of the game. The new leaders of Team Rocket were not superstitious, and went ahead and built the radio tower anyways, after which the owner of the construction company working on the Vermilion construction project suddenly died, leaving the project never to be completed. Yeah, I like this one. It's, I think, probably not what Game Freak intended, but I do think it is realistic. However, it's not quite as, like, scary, I guess, as the other ones, so I don't know if I'd put it in spoopy and creepy, but I'll put it in okay, let them cook. Alright, so that's my final ranking. If you disagree with it, feel free to fight amongst yourselves in the comments. And I just want to say that, like, I'm not trying to, like, shit on any of the creators of these creepypastas. Like, I'm sure a lot of the people writing these were, like, young themselves. I have an appreciation for all creepypastas, good and bad, in my heart. This was just something that I wanted to do for fun. But there is a twist to this video that I have not revealed yet. One of these creepypastas is not real. It's one that I made up, and I want you, without looking it up or anything, to guess which one you think is the one that I made up. And if you do, I will post the full creepypasta that I wrote, because yes, I did write a full 1,200 word story for my fake creepypasta. I will post it for you to read if somebody guesses it correctly. Alright, so yeah, thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, comment, rate 5 stars, share with a friend, smash that fucking bell, and yeah, I'll catch y'all in the next one.